What's going on, YouTube? I'm back with another video today talking about internal and external rotation at setup and what that means in your backswing. Let's get into it. So I got this comment on one of my YouTube videos talking about internal and external rotation. The question was, at address, he said that a lot of coaches, which I've heard, talk about externally rotating your right shoulder and leaving it externally rotated for the backswing and downswing. This is a commonly taught practice in golf. We're going to dissect that today and tell you, is it good, is it bad, and what you should actually be doing. Let's do this. So I kind of cringe a lot when people talk about this aspect because, first off, a lot of times when you're actually set up to the golf ball, the right shoulder or trail shoulder is not actually in true external rotation. It's more so just not super internally rotated at setup, so people think that it's more externally rotated at setup when it's realistically somewhere in the neutral ground. So one of the main reasons that coaches tell you to start with external rotation at setup is when your shoulder is externally rotated at setup and you leave it in external rotation on your backswing, you've already preloaded that external rotation so you can start to downswing in external rotation and stay with a shallowed club. The goal is to get your right shoulder, trail shoulder in external rotation on the downswing to shallow the club to have a good club path. But what tends to happen when you start in external rotation is you have a much higher tendency to just throw this club to the inside. You don't want to do this because actually it's counterintuitive to that downswing. So instead of staying in external rotation, you're then gonna flip it into internal rotation on the downswing more than likely. And if you don't, you lose all power because you're externally rotated and now you're just having to turn with your body and there's no actual driving force. So I don't like the aspect of starting in external rotation to stay in external rotation to have your downswing in external rotation. A lot of external rotation, but I'm not a big fan of that. Now there are a few ways to counter this move if you are externally rotated at address, where you can have more T-spine mobility, so you're not just flipping your club this way to the inside, you can actually start turning a little bit more. But what happens here is a lot of people start judging where the club is for how far inside and out you are. So if you're externally rotated but your hands are this way, while it looks incredibly weird, people would say this is not a flat swing because the club head is further that way than my hands. So I could be in the same position, externally rotated shoulder, break my wrist this way, and now it's an outside backswing versus an inside backswing versus roughly flat. But again, that's not a position to succeed in the golf swing. You're preloading something, and when you preload something, you kind of lose that rubber band effect. You're not having any snap to actually deliver speed to the ball, so you lose tons of speed. So let me tell you what you should actually be doing at address versus preloading that shoulder into external rotation. Now this varies person to person. I say this all the time. Every golfer is different, every swing is different. Some of the principles can be applied, but you ultimately have to figure out which one for you is the best. Shoulder internal and external rotation at address is dependent on your grip. There's a lot of things that have to do with your grip. This is one of them. The weaker your grip is, the more internally rotated your shoulder has to be, because your right hand now is having to climb on top of the club. Likewise, the stronger the grip, the more externally rotated your shoulder has to be. So for me personally, I do have my shoulder start in external rotation because I have such a strong grip that I'm going down the back of the golf shaft. Shoulder is going to in external rotation, but I'll give you this. I used to have an incredibly flat swing because I would do that. I would stay in external rotation on the backswing, have a flat swing, and then the only thing from here to actually get any power is to try to muscle it back this way, versus a swing where it comes back natural, drops into the slot, and you're essentially creating this loop to keep momentum. All momentum is paused this way when you're in external rotation, so you have to get it going this way or you lose all power trying to drag it through the zone. So what do I do to compensate for this now, because I don't have a flat swing? Well, starting in external rotation of the right shoulder, I change from external rotation to internal rotation of the shoulder. So I start externally rotated, I switch to internal rotation. That keeps the club head more online in the backswing where you want it to be. I actually have an outside takeaway right now because I'm really emphasizing that loop, which generates a lot of speed. Regardless of that though, principle stays the same. Go into internal rotation on the backswing, which is good. What happens when you get to the top in internal rotation is your hands are a lot higher. If you're externally rotated, you can see my hands drop. internal rotation, higher hands, external rotation, lower hands. The higher your hands, the more speed potential you can create because it's a bigger arc. There is a lot of speed that can be generated when you're in internal rotation and jam it into external rotation. That shallows the club, but this motion is incredibly powerful. This motion is not very powerful. And that's starting in external rotation, staying in external rotation, and driving in. You don't have a lot of power. I would love to demo this for you, but it is incredibly difficult for me to do without throwing it over the top because it's hard to stay on line, but I'm gonna give it a shot for you guys. So we're gonna try to stay in internal rotation, flat backswing, stay in internal rotation. I don't know how close we got to that, but that was a very difficult swing. It's very difficult to go external rotation, stay externally rotated, and then just drive in, because you feel like there's no power and you're just having to try to rotate and figure it out. Even when starting an external rotation and you get your hands nice and high, throwing it into internal, now you have the power to jam it down, and that's when you can really apply speed to the golf ball and hit the ball a lot further. So I want to demo this principle in a little bit different way. So I have a baseball here. Essentially, when you're throwing a baseball, naturally, you're going to be in internal rotation until at the last moment, you're getting up to the top, you're flipping it into external rotation so you can drive and deliver, and then obviously at the end, it flips back into internal rotation when you actually throw the ball. But you essentially start in internal, move to external to throw it. If you stay in external that whole time, just like if you stay external, 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 if you stay in external that whole time, and this would be your throw. You have no whip effect of this. It's just here, and you throw it. Well, that's gonna be a lot less powerful and a lot more awkward than just having a natural flowing arm where you can actually get your elbow to start moving correctly. Internal, throw it back into external. Now you're actually getting momentum to throw the baseball. So, same principle of internal, external, deliver, which is just a normal throw. It's really, really awkward again, going external early and just leaving it there, and then, yeah. I think I even cheated a little bit going back into internal, but that's okay. You get the principle. So the same philosophy applies. I don't care if you start in internal rotation because you have a weak grip and you want to stay in internal, because then you can still drive into external. But if you start in external, you can't just stay in external on your backswing because you need to have something to transition to. It's way, way better to keep a circle moving or to keep movement than to have a dead stop motion here and then throw it over the top, or dead stop motion here and try to stay there. That's really gonna cost you speed, it's gonna cost you accuracy, and you're not gonna enjoy golf as much. That is it for today. Last takeaway for the video. Again, it doesn't matter how you start up, if you're internally rotated, if you're externally rotated, but in the backswing, you want to always err on the side of internal rotation, so at the top of your swing, you have higher hands, more potential for speed, and an actual ability to drive into the ball with force, leading into external rotation, because that's what's going to be the difference between you hitting the ball further and hitting the ball better. Remember to leave your comments down below if you have any questions about this or any future video ideas for me to make. Guys, I appreciate your love and support, and until next time, we'll see you later.